ADHD is like having 20 tabs open on your computer and all of them are screaming at you at the same time. There are a lot of misconceptions about ADHD, and I've personally learned a lot from you.
When we look at ADHD, we look at a lifelong pattern.
Yeah.
And things maybe you wouldn't have named at that time, but now with this lens, you can look back and go, oh.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Jesus and Your Mental Health, the podcast. I am here with a great friend and colleague, Julie Norman. She is a therapist in my practice and does a lot of things, but one of the things she specializes in is diagnosing and working with clients that have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And she mostly works with adults in that space, some adolescents as well. And so I want to welcome you, Julie, and want you to tell us a little bit about you in whatever way you want to.
Thanks. I am a counselor at Jacksonville Counseling. I graduated from Liberty University in 2023. I'm among the 50-year-old therapist crowd in our inaugural phase. It's my fourth career.
Yes.
Undiagnosed ADHD. And so I'm really happy to be in this space now, helping other people discover if that's something that they struggle with and then how to work with it.
Yeah, great. Well, let's dive into trying to help our listeners and watchers understand a little bit more about it, because there are a lot of misconceptions about ADHD, and I've personally learned a lot from you about ADHD. I've gotten to take a little test to see if I have any symptoms of ADHD, which has been fun. But let's start with, what it is and what it isn't, maybe what some of the common misconceptions are about this diagnosis.
Sure. ADHD is a dopamine sensitive neurodiversity.
Okay.
And what that means is that the motivation to do something inside that brain, unless it's novel or new or exciting, it's really hard to arrive at for task initiation. And the misconception there, particularly for parents, is real frustrating because I was one. Before I became a therapist, I had kids with undiagnosed ADHD. And it feels a lot like a choice, and I think that that's where a lot of parents get frustrated. The common quote that I will hear is, if they enjoyed it or if it was a video game, they have no problem doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true, because that's literally the definition.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not a choice.
Yeah. If you had a way to explain the experience of ADHD, actually, let me share what someone has shared with me, and then I want to hear kind of your response to that, and maybe if you can add something to it.
Sure.
I actually saw this from an Instagram reel that a client sent me, and it was a woman explaining that ADHD is like having 20 tabs open on your computer and all of them are screaming at you at the same time. And that your brain really has no way to prioritize those tabs, right? So if one of the tabs is this bill is due today and the other tab is I need to fold my socks, both of those things are screaming at you and your ADHD brain doesn't know which one is more important. So you end up folding the socks and not paying the bill.
Or you end up doing a third thing, which was much more fun. You lay on the couch and cry because you're overwhelmed with all your tasks.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So is that a pretty good explanation of like the internal experience of ADHD?
It is. It's standing in the door, getting ready to leave and doing the 30th check to make sure you have everything, and getting in your car and still not having everything, and getting back out of the car and not knowing what you got out for.
Yeah.
It's this constant checking of yourself to make sure that you present as put together.
Okay. Wow. And so you mentioned that there's a dopamine issue. Can you talk a little bit more about that, especially in relation to that experience that we just described?
Yeah, so a lot of addictions are dopamine driven, right? And this deficit in the ADHD brain creates this need for new, this
Okay.
need for more, this need for novel and different. And there are some safe dopamine ways we can get. There's a list of like safe and fun activities, but anything to excess can become problematic. And the trouble is, if we find something that we like or that is a good outlet when we don't want to do something else, it steals the attention and it keeps
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Um, eh,
Okay.
because it's giving us that dopamine hit. It's much like your kids when they're texting and they can't seem to put it down and they hear the
Okay.
beep and it's Pavlovian. It's a
Yeah.
bit like that.
Yeah. Okay. And so keep talking a little bit about how ADHD shows up in the various facets of our life, in relationships, in work, in
Yeah,
school, even spiritual practices.
sure. In spiritual practices, that's a pretty easy one. Prayer life can be really hard
Okay.
because pausing for self care is a foreign concept. Because not to generalize, but for my own self, the keeping up of appearances takes so much energy
Uh,
that the self maintenance lacks. In relationships, it looks like double booked or I'm late, I'm time blind. Um, I really want to do the thing I said I was going to do, but past me made plans for future me that my energy level can't uphold.
yeah.
In parenting, it looks like inconsistency. We
Okay.
live at such a pace that if we have neurodivergent children, there is a biological component. And so it's likely we might be operating in some chaos. And the structure that a person with ADHD needs but doesn't like is required and often not provided by the families we're raised in.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And I guess work and relationships would be, yeah, I guess you kind of mentioned work, showing up late.
Well,
No,
work can be a place to overperform
okay.
because you can get really good, and oftentimes you work in something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
But overwhelm creeps in even when you're doing really well and managed well. If crisis happens or stress happens and your previously working coping skills are now deficit, they're not working for this. You're going to miss deadlines and your email is going to stack up. And a lot of times we go more and more internal as we have that self blame and self flagellation for all the things
Okay.
that aren't instead of celebrating what we are.
Wow. Okay. So I hear a couple layers. We have the layer of tasks that are more difficult with ADHD. And then there's this other layer, which is true of a lot of diagnoses of guilt or shame that probably, I'm guessing, doesn't help the underlying issues, just probably makes them worse and maybe can lead to anxiety and depression.
Yeah, it's such a self licking ice cream cone almost. So, if you were a child and you were diagnosed with ADHD and your parents took you for care and you got medication, sometimes there was a stigma in the household, right? Because medication has a lot of feelings about it. People
Yeah.
feel very strongly. So maybe one parent advocated for it and one didn't. And
Okay.
so you felt this kind of sidebar shame because you were doing something one parent didn't really like.
Mhm.
Or you felt other kinds of shame because of labels or your inability to function the same way others do at school. I think this statistic is 5 times as much, but by kindergarten, a child with undiagnosed ADHD has been called out 5 times more than their peers.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
they can sometimes perform in this class clown way because if I'm getting called out, I need to work that to my advantage so it's not
Right.
embarrassing.
Right. Right. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. So I want to talk about two things. Meds, we're going to save. I want to dig into that a little bit more, but I'm interested in how ADHD presents differently in men and women
sure. Versus boys and girls. Yeah,
and boys and girls.
yeah.
Yes. Wherever you want
So
to go with that.
I'll go men and women first.
Okay.
What I'm seeing a lot personally, and this is by no means any mathematical statistic, but my client population comes to me typically because they've been caught in the act of acting out or they're
Okay.
having some other addictive issue.
Okay.
And when we do a test, I like to use an objective test that measures response time and impulsivity and attention. There's a number of different tests you can use, but these have real pretty graphs and measurable numbers.
Yeah.
Um, because women are coming saying, I've lived this great life. I've
Mhm.
worked hard. My
Mhm.
kids, I managed them. I stayed home. I was a PTA mom. I did all the things.
Mhm.
And now I'm retired and my kids are gone and I don't know who I am and I'm a wreck. I have nothing to manage
Mhm.
and my life is wide open and crazy.
Mhm.
Because this box we've lived in and the structure we set for ourselves is suddenly gone.
Yeah.
It shows up a lot more too when men retire.
Okay.
And for females, from girls, it was quiet in school and maybe
Mhm.
teacher's pet and really, really functional. They were the babysitter. They were doing
Mhm.
things beyond their years too young.
Oh, wow.
Um, they internalize a lot of need for perfection
Okay.
and it sustains them sometimes through college. You get great students in Ivy League schools, and they've put this pressure on themselves to be awesome, and they are awesome. And then when our coping skills hit this wall of something in life that we can't handle, um, if we're not in the practice of taking it to the Lord in prayer, and even if we are, we're going to find that those coping skills need some support. And we might find out we have this undiagnosed difference in our brain that creates this response to things that other people don't have.
Wow. Okay.
And it's always the women who go, really? Are you sure? And then the more they look at symptomology and reframe it, the more they see it aligns with their history. And then there's
Okay.
a great peace and revelation that comes to naming it and working with it,
Yeah.
though sometimes a season of grief also.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And so then with men and boys, how does that differ? I hear in the girls, early on perfectionism and teacher's pet and high functioning. Um, you know, what I hear is like this engine that's always on and going and doing and learning. And then you mention like there's a time where you hit a wall and that
Yeah.
might be a major life change, or some traumatic event, maybe something like that,
Yeah.
where you're not working functioning on that high level anymore. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And
Um,
then for the boys, how's that different?
So for boys, they were commonly observed in the 80s and early 90s and now as the more traditional way we explain ADHD
Okay.
with
Hmm.
this hyperactive behavior, this loud, rambunctious, often excused as boys' behavior. And then early on, people took the route of medication. And as we were going through trials and different treatments, some would get over medicated or under medicated, and really finding the right blend with children is really difficult. And so it got a real bad rap. Those boys, even if they were medicated as children, they probably stopped in their teen years and in their college years. They
Okay.
tend to stray away to find their own path. And if they're able to manage, if they outgrew it, which some people can, not really outgrow, but adapt with really strong coping, um,
Okay.
they can stabilize. But if they don't, they can end up in porn addiction or really high stress work that creates workaholism. So we don't have to engage intimately and we perform where we're proficient.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is when someone is undiagnosed or untreated, it can lead to kind of coping in maladaptive ways or adapting in ways that maybe aren't as healthy, that could lead to addiction.
Very much so, or other negative outcomes, even. If we look at the teenage population, your teenage male undiagnosed or untreated ADHD is your drag racer. They're doing the really big adrenaline, testosterone driven things as these hormones flood their body, and they're adapting to that change. And they already didn't have the same brain chemical balance as others. In females, we get that the lunar cycle
Okay.
affects our feelings, our hormones affect our feelings.
Yeah.
And that hormonal shift and fluctuation is more deeply felt by females with ADHD.
Ah,
And so, yeah, just in January, some research came out about PMDD, premenstrual
okay.
dysphoric disorder,
Yeah.
which is like PMS monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it affects life in ways that people don't understand. And we typically can make a lot of mockery or jokes around those symptoms, but for young girls who are feeling them for the first time and whose feelings feel really out of control, there's the emotional regulation piece, and then they get discounted and
Mm.
told that it's a function of their cycle. And while it is, it's still manageable with some treatment.
Okay. Gosh, that's really helpful. And what I'm thankful for in just our current research community is that we are getting so much more information about the uniqueness of females and how their biology and makeup and cycles impact mental health and impact functioning, impact everything.
Everything.
And I'm really thankful for that because I think that that has been missing for so long. And so just understanding the uniqueness, we're not all just men. We're
Yeah.
not
Well,
exactly like men.
a lot of women don't realize that estrogen fuels their brain. Like that's the
Mm,
energy for
yeah.
your brain.
Yes.
So when we made jokes about grandma putting her glasses in the refrigerator, that she was dropping her estrogen, her brain was not working as well. We
Yeah.
live longer now. It's more
Yeah.
important to take care of that.
Yeah. And so this, I'm just going to ask this. You could take it where you want, but what is the interplay between dropping estrogen, peri and menopausal women? And I know there's some discrepancy around diagnosing anxiety and depression versus hormonal issues versus ADHD. How do you shake all that out, especially on the ADHD side?
It's really hard because in my limited scope and experience, people don't want to test women's hormone levels when
Yeah.
they're in this 30 to 50-year-old phase of life.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost have to pay concierge care, which makes it limited
Mm-hmm.
access. And therefore, there are whole segments of our population that aren't getting the care they need.
Yeah.
But what I try to do is encourage people to get a panel first. Let's look at what normal
Okay.
estrogen looks like.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, as it drops, that's going to change your concentration and your organization. When we look at ADHD, we look at a lifelong pattern
Yeah.
and things maybe you wouldn't have named at that time. But now with this lens, you can look back and go, oh,
That's really helpful. That's
yeah.
really helpful.
So it's the
So
lifelong part.
the lifelong part is really key in the diagnosing,
Yes.
seeing those patterns over the lifespan
Yes.
versus, yes,
Versus the right now.
versus the
I,
right now, the
I think
change
that's
that's
where a lot
happening.
of people get diagnostically frustrated is there's this perception that right now on social media everyone has ADHD or
Yeah.
everyone has autism.
Hmm.
And maybe, I don't know if the shoe fits, but a clinical diagnosis is helpful. If you are going to wear a hat, make sure it fits.
Yeah.
But,
That's a good word.
there's something to be said to the pace with which we're running and the things we're putting in our body and the
Yeah.
ways we're not connected to the Father.
Right.
That all creates chaos. And
Yeah.
it's a stewardship issue to take care of what you have and what you've been given and to
Mhm.
maintain it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good word. And there is so much self-diagnosing, it seems like. You watch a few reels on TikTok and you identify with those, and then all of a sudden you're wearing this as a badge. And maybe even using it as an excuse in a lot of cases.
Sure.
And I know people are just trying to figure things out, right? I think that the intention behind that is good. But it is such a good word for the people that listen here that it is important that you find a practitioner who I would say even specializes in this area and is approaching the work holistically,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't think every mental health provider necessarily will suggest getting a full blood panel, full hormone panel, thyroid panel, and looking, approaching every person holistically, heart, soul, mind, and strength to say, let's look at everything that's going on before providing a quick diagnosis. And so I think that's important for people to know is like, I know you want an answer, but let's take our time and get the right answer and
Yeah.
figure out how to move forward in the best way. And moving forward in the best way sometimes involves medication and sometimes not. So I'm a little bit interested in that because especially a lot of Christians do not want to take medications, especially psychotropic ones, and stimulants if they don't have to. So I'm interested in how you approach that with folks. I would imagine you see a lot of people that are either very open or very closed to medication, and how you kind of approach helping them determine what's the right treatment for them.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think a big part of it too is how people get to me specifically. They are usually coming for something else. Like I said, they've
Ah,
acted out or gotten in trouble somewhere,
okay.
and they're not looking for an excuse, but I'm listening for symptoms because I'm aware of this intersection.
Yeah.
There's also an intersection of autism and ADHD, and both of those can have this hypersexual component. And
Okay.
so, a lot of times that's how people end up in trouble. They have this undiagnosed thing, they act out, they feel shame, they act out, they feel shame, they get caught. So when I say, hey, have you ever, done these 7 things? Let's take this assessment. We talk through it. If the indicators on the adult self assessment are clear, and we can talk about the potential for neurodiversity or ADHD, then we have a conversation and talk about various avenues of treatment. If the person doesn't believe that, then we can look at a more objective test and we can look at numbers.
Okay.
And with children, I like to do that way because the particular test that we use, if they choose pharmacological support, and I work with providers who are holistic and who require therapy as a part of prescribing. So
Yes.
no one's getting out for
Yes.
medication only. Um, and so we look at if that's possible and what that change would be. Um, and then 2 hours post ingestion, we can look at how their numbers change. So we get
Wow.
to a real quick answer of what's right versus what's too much. Because a
Okay.
lot of people have a very cliche complaint of, I've heard it makes you not yourself or it takes away your personality.
Mhm.
I have some good insight on somehow people feel that way. The undiagnosed ADHD person is really gregarious in the right context, and they're a lot of fun
Okay.
to be around.
Yeah.
And they're loud and they
Yeah.
are funny and a little bit disorganized. And then if they get treatment, whether that's medication or cognitive behavioral training or meditation, mindfulness, they become a serious person, sort
Oh.
of. Like your focus for the
Mhm.
potential you have that was not realized yet,
Mm.
coupled with the awareness of the time you have left.
Mm.
One of
Wow.
my sons puts it this way: people used to stop at his desk every day and joke with him for like 20 minutes because he was a cut up and a ham.
Mhm.
And after he started seeking treatment, they'd come by his desk and he would be like, cool, thanks, I'm working. and, and nobody liked that. And so I think sometimes
Wow.
there's a little bit of that too in the personality changes.
Right.
But it's not a negative change for adults. It's just a more focused, purposeful existence.
Okay. And do you find that there's both discovery and welcoming that change, but also a little bit of loss in that change.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is.
Yeah, probably mixed emotions about it.
For some, if the diagnosis comes late and is an adult driven thing, for me personally, I'll say when I look back and think of all I could have done,
Mm,
that's a little sad. I'm a little frustrated by that. And I had a period of grief. I dropped out of high school my senior year.
mm,
I had 3 kids before I was 21 and met Jesus. Like I had this whole train wreck of an existence where there was a bunch of carnage and wreckage behind me.
mhm.
That made me really sad that it didn't really have to be that way. If anyone had known, or if I had had treatment, or
Yeah,
maybe there's a cure for cancer out there by some kid who is not living up to their potential, which
yeah.
actually don't say because that's not nice. um, but being able to focus your intention wherever you want it is a gift that not everyone recognizes.
So how would you say that? Instead of they're not living up to their potential, what's the, because yeah, that is very negative, right? And it's usually used in a negative way. But
Yeah,
what's the reality of what you're describing with ADHD when they do discover
yeah.
and get treatment? What is that shift? How would you describe it?
I would describe it as walking more fully in who you're called to be.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because there are things about the ADHD brain that are wonderful. And
Yeah,
people that are neurodivergent are a huge asset in creativity, in vision casting, in
yeah,
rallying others.
yeah.
I used to take a spiritual giftings test that had the role of pioneer and settler. I don't
Okay.
remember that one.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I was always a pioneer. Like I could come in and do something, spot problems, set up a system and a process, and be enthusiastic and love it.
Mhm.
And then I need to leave. I want to hand it over to someone else because I get bored and I need a new challenge.
Yeah.
And so I think that the ability to recognize that and harness it is beautiful. Your artists, your musicians,
Yeah.
all the creative people have some difference in their brain that is different from mine, is different from yours. And God made us all uniquely wired and gifted.
Mhm.
I think just being able to tap into and harness is really important. And our world wasn't built for that. Our world was built by the smart linear thinkers that got there first with the
Wow.
money to build the systems. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
getting support you need is really important.
So, with the right support, what can these uniquely gifted neurodivergent folks accomplish? Maybe then more or in a better way or more fulfilling way than they could without the right treatment. Am I making sense?
Yeah, for sure. And not even going into like career and like sustainable finances. We can just talk about relationships.
Yeah. Okay.
Because a person with a undiagnosed ADHD relational strategy is turn and burn. Like we might do some crazy thing or be real energetic or just pull away and overwhelm, and relationships don't get sustained that way. And then the shame of wanting to re-enter and repair gets really hard.
Mhm.
And then if you're using it as an excuse, like you mentioned, the ability to go, oh well, it's my neurodivergence. People
Mhm.
tire of that really quickly, and that's not fair to the rest of us that are like working and
Sure. Yeah.
trying to bring others along with us.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. How can faith communities, how can Christians be a little bit more understanding and welcoming? Like, what do faith communities need to know about ADHD and about neurodivergence, and how can they be supportive of people? Because there are plenty of Christians struggling with these issues.
Yeah, for sure. I thought about this question for a minute last night while I was going to sleep, and the word that kept coming to my mind is grace. Like it's just
Yeah.
common. Like
Yeah.
if we're just kind to one another and we seek to understand with curiosity,
Hmm.
then then people don't get so ashamed and they don't turn and they don't posture and they don't try to overprove who they are.
Yeah.
Um, More practically, I think in children's spaces, the ability to worship with movement, which almost all
Yes.
churches do, and to have space in the back or onto the side for people who need to stand or walk or color.
Mm-hmm.
But really, grace goes into that, all those quick judgments we make about the people sitting in the third row, talking on their phone or coloring or whatever during service. And
Yeah.
like, none of that's necessary. We don't know where their head is, and
Yeah.
it's not ours to judge.
Yeah.
Um, Fidget spinners and things like that are really
Yeah.
helpful to distract someone so that they can think linearly. And for me, that looks like when I'm in church, I have to be writing. And
Okay.
I might be drawing, I might be writing half a word, but the hand has to be moving for me to hear and process what's going on.
Ah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so I think that the church could go a long way towards making that um, more common, just acceptance more common. A lot of spaces for people to be themselves, just to be judgment free with curiosity.
Mhm.
And when we look at people who are addicted or who behave differently or outside the norms or even the standards God has set for us, we might just start with why. And I
Yeah.
wonder what's different about their brain or how they got there,
Yeah.
because people don't choose it.
Hmm. That's such an important thing to remember. And I love the word curiosity. I feel like it's one of my like new favorite words. Whether I'm working in couples therapy and asking people to try to be curious instead of reactive, or in this setting. And I think it's such a great word for those of us in the church as we're trying to love one another well, is being curious about what might be going on instead of being quick to judge or want people to fall in line with the way that we do things. I walked into church last night and there was a young man who obviously had some physical and potentially mental disabilities, but he was sitting listening to the band practice and just moving his arms and legs all
Mm.
over the place. And I couldn't tell if it was voluntarily or involuntarily or a combination of both. But I just thought, oh, how cool that we have a place where he can come and be and have some space to move as he needs to move. And then another gentleman in a wheelchair dropped his Bible, and four people ran over to pick this up. And I just thought, gosh, like, I'm so thankful. And we can always do a better job, but it just reminded me of this conversation of being curious about, I wonder what might be going on and how I can best support this person in their expression of worship and their seeking the Lord in this place. We can certainly do a better job.
One of the things I like about our church is there's not a lot of programming in the building. Like,
Yeah.
there's not this, I grew up almost every night, you go do a thing.
Mm,
And so that allows for being out in the world and being curious about how people operate out there versus inside. And then we see this pace that we're living in, this chaos, this go, 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 go. I have clients that are young adolescents, and they're leaving their house at 7 and they're not getting back till 9:30 or 10 at night. And there's
wow.
just not enough hours in the day for the sleep that we need, the food that we need, the
Yeah.
relational bank that we have to build.
Mhm.
And so a neurodivergent parent is going to be less accommodating to a neurodivergent child
Yeah. Wow.
because they just don't have the patience.
Hmm.
And so getting ourselves in line so we can be better parents, that fall in line is where that took me, that commando parenting style. The data just came out, the data that says that's not so great. But a lot of us were raised that way and we
Yeah.
don't know anything different. And even if we say we don't want to be that way, we are.
Yeah.
So seeking some interpersonal neurobiological training or parenting training, because it's okay to kneel and ask your kid what they need and teach them to breathe so
Yeah.
they can regulate, so
Yeah.
you can have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Before you, if necessary, discipline, right?
Right.
that
Make
connects before you
assumptions about
correct.
the need.
Yeah, absolutely. And in talking in another episode with Emily Yee about emotionally intense
Mm,
kids and adults, which I think falls in, we weren't saying specifically ADHD or autism, but she was talking a little bit about neurodivergence. We were just really focusing on that emotional intensity. But we talked quite a bit about parents getting help, that if your kid needs help regulating and needs to co-regulate with you, but you don't know how to self-regulate, it's going to be really difficult to help them. And
yeah.
so I love you're saying the same thing, which is parents, you go first and do the work of, getting some help and some skills and tools to regulate yourself so that you can co-regulate with your
Yeah,
kids. I think that's so important.
it is.
So let's kind of end talking a little bit about some strategies, both spiritually and practically. I know we've talked about medication and maybe how to approach that, but what are some practical things that you give to your clients to help them manage symptoms, to nurture their mental, spiritual, emotional health,
Mm-hmm.
to manage, the things that they have to do that might not be the things they want to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, so sadly, like so many other things, it comes down to making a decision
Mm,
and having a plan.
yeah.
So for a lot of people with ADHD, body doubling and parallel play are very effective.
Okay.
And
More.
yeah, what this sounds like in our non-clinical life is, hey, I've got to cook dinner. Can you come over and sit at the bar while I do it real quick?
Uh,
Or I need to clean out the garage. Want to come chat? You don't necessarily need help doing the thing, but somehow having someone close by provides accountability and motivation to do the thing.
wow. I love that. I feel like that's very biblical. That's one
Yeah,
anothering. That's being with.
right?
It's being
Co-laboring.
present. So great.
Yeah. And then we look at right fit roles. Like,
Okay.
are you doing what you're designed to do? And if you're a student, are we headed towards the thing that you want to be headed towards? And if you're an adult in the workforce, are you a square peg in a round hole? Let's look
Uh,
at your strengths and gifts,
mhm.
and then plug those in the right place. The ADHD thinker has rapid ideation and situational courage and humor and empathy, so
Mhm.
much empathy, and hyper focus on
Yeah.
meaningful goals. And so harnessing that becomes really important.
Okay.
Um,
Mm,
Agendas at work that have time boxes or drawings, something to visually break up information, or bolded action steps, those all help.
okay.
Um, what matters now summaries, like bottom line up front.
Mm,
And I relate that to 1 Corinthians 14:40. I have a little scripture list. Movement friendly worship, standing, fidget tools, brief reflection, embodied devotion.
oh,
Ritualizing things is really helpful too.
okay.
Um, and because time blindness and task switching can really mess someone up, if we block our calendars into topics and
Mm,
then within that have the freedom to accomplish a number of things, that works really well.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then visual timers, audio timers. YouTube has a ton of Pomodoro timers. They're usually in a 50-minute working block and a 10-minute break block. So you get these audible cues. And
Yes.
they're
I used
usually,
that when I was writing my book.
oh, good.
Yeah.
They're usually paired with like a beta or theta waves, and
Okay.
the ADHDer needs more of their theta. So
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Say a little bit more about that. People are listening and going, I don't know what she's talking about.
yeah, and I don't want to say wrongly, but either the theta or the beta is the deficient in the ADHD brain. And
Okay.
so when we augmented that, even with like EDM music where the layers and the beats are just off,
Okay.
it distracts this little part of my brain so that I can then focus on this part. Otherwise, I'm focused here and I hear, oh, what's happening in the kitchen? They're cutting the grass outside. My dog
Ah,
attention.
yeah. Again, everything is
Every
screaming at you at a loud volume, and it's hard to distinguish. So that kind of audio, that kind of sound helps you focus.
Yeah, and the frequency is different for everyone, or the beat is different. I'm not into EDM, but my daughter, she can turn it on and just knock it out for a day. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I just became aware of lo-fi chill music.
That's her beat. There's
And
good graphics too.
yeah, graphics. I didn't even know they're graphics. I mean, I love it. I put it on just if I want to. I have found the older I get, I appreciate music without words, right? So just the instrumental or the beats or like that lo-fi that kind of feels like you're in a swanky club maybe,
Hmm?
but
Like a
it's
dinner
not like
party in the 50s.
yes, dinner party in the 50s.
Yeah,
We laugh because my husband always puts on bossa nova music for me. I love it so much.
awesome.
But those are good things. Well, gosh, you gave our listeners, they're going to have to pause and take notes. You gave them a lot of suggestions that they could dive into a little bit more, decision making and planning, body doubling, parallel play, really harnessing your strengths using visual reminders and timers and blocking out your schedule. There are so many things. What occurs to me in hearing you is there are so many things that people can make the decision to do to help their symptoms.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm interested in is how much do all of these different things help versus medication? Like, can people really avoid taking medication if they're really motivated to put a lot of these supports in place?
Um, maybe. I'm not educated in prescribing, and so let me start there. But what I do know, and I look at a lot of research out of Australia, they are always somehow on the front line of a lot of research.
Okay.
And um, they have a multimodal model of treatment that says if we catch it early, really the best thing to do is train parents.
Okay.
And let's teach parents how to build schedules and eat right and get enough sleep and
Ah.
not be over activitied.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this structure will help your child with their executive function.
Okay.
Then, if we get into adolescents and teens, it becomes teen cognitive behavioral training. How do we function with it? And then, if that doesn't work well, we can augment with medication.
Okay.
With adults, we can try non medication, we can try medication. And what typically seems to be the deciding factor is what kind of crisis are you in right now? How did you get to me? Because as an adult, you didn't come saying, I think I have ADHD,
Right. Yeah.
right? So sometimes life is so out of control and our
Mhm.
ability to emotionally regulate is worn out and we've worn a mask and we're overwhelmed that sometimes medication might be the right answer to get the foundation of clarity so
Right.
that you can build on it. And maybe you don't need it forever, but the stigma and the shame that people are carrying about, I hate that I have to take, if you had asthma and had to have an inhaler, like people can't see that you can't breathe. People can't see that I have ADHD. Well, if you look at my car, you can tell. But but I need medication and I'm going to take it because it helps me. Now, if it doesn't help you, then there are lots of things we can do. And if you're hesitant to take it, there's non stimulants, there's homeopathics.
Okay.
Um, the point is intentionality and where it gets back to taking care of what God gave you instead of living at the pace of the world to get what you want.
Oh, that's such a good word.
Thanks.
Say that again if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, medication means taking care of what God gave me
Yeah.
instead of chasing what I want,
Yeah. And running at the pace of the world and what the
running at the
world
pace of the
demands. Yeah. That's so good, Julie. You've given us so much information. I feel like we probably just scratched the surface of what we could share. And I hope we've given folks just a pretty good look at what ADHD is, the experience of it, how the faith community can be educated and be more kind and compassionate and curious about folks who are neurodivergent. And then just I feel like you gave people some hope that there are options. And I think something to consider, knowing that people don't get to you because they are wanting to treat their ADHD. They come for another crisis. And I think that's helpful for people that are listening to us to consider, is it ADHD? Could it be ADHD? And so
And
that's
that's just step one, by the way, not an
right,
excuse. Yeah.
right. Just step one. And but such good information as people are trying to, especially our listeners, trying to live in a way that honors God and to understand how they were wired and what the possibilities are for them in terms of human flourishing with the strengths and the uniqueness that they have been given by God. And you've really given them a lot of information to consider.
Thank
I
you.
want to end with, if you could just give us a little bit of information about how people could find you.
Yeah. Actually, if you go to jacksonvillecounseling.net and go to the therapist tab, I'm listed in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Tank top with tattoos. That's me.
it's a good way to remember.
Yeah, you can get in touch with me there. If it's ADHD specific and you can't remember all that, you can go to isitadhd.org
Okay,
and
great.
we can get assessments there. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's at adhd.org. We will definitely put that in the show notes so people can find that, because I think that is a great resource. And being able to do some of the testing that you mentioned, I think is a great resource, a starting place for someone to try to discover what's going on with them. So
Yeah.
thank you for your wealth of knowledge. I learned a ton just in talking to you for the last 45 minutes. And so I'm sure lots of our listeners and watchers will be blessed as well. And probably we should think about a follow-up conversation and maybe going one little level deeper
I'd love that.
in this. So thank you, Julie. Let me pray for those who are listening, and we will finish up. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this conversation with my good friend Julie. I thank you for the unique way that you have wired her and gifted her. And I thank you, Lord, that you've brought her into this place where she is sharing it more widely with the faith community. Thank you for giving her the courage to walk her own journey and the courage to share that and be vulnerable in sharing that. Lord, I just pray for the listener who is wondering if this might be them. I just pray for them right now, Lord, that you would just be present with them and encourage them to take the next step of discovery, that you would take away any guilt or shame they might be feeling about what they're experiencing or the related behaviors, and that you would just encourage them to take the next step of discovery. Because, Lord, we know that we live in a world where there is so much diversity in many ways. And that is one of the beautiful parts about you, that in your creation, the diversity just goes on and on and on. And we thank you for that. And we thank you for your son. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Till
Hey,
next
before you turn off your recording,
Yeah.
a couple of things I wanted to share in case you want to use them.
Yeah.
One of the big things that we can do to treat is to seek evaluation, but protect sleep, movement, and protein forward meals. Like if we're going to change diet, dyes are important, sugars are important, but getting enough protein really fuels the brain.
Yeah.
And then I talked about that dopamine deficiency and how we can fuel it with not great things like work or porn or acting out of our relational boundaries. Safe dopamine that I mentioned would be like that cold splash of water on your face when you first wake up,
Yeah.
or the kind of music that makes you have goosebumps,
Yeah.
driving to work differently, getting more sunlight, short deadlines with accountability, things like that.
Yeah. I love
Okay,
that. That is such a great list.
good.
Thank you, Julie.